Back in July of 2019, when AMD launched the Ryzen 5 3600, they turned the PC market on its head. And since then, it has been hailed as the god-tier bang-for-your-buck CPU. So today, I prepared a little test to show why it is still the king of bang-for-your-buck CPUs in late 2020. On this side, we have the Ryzen 5 5600X at $300, and on this side, we have the Ryzen 5 3600 at $200. Well, sometimes it drops into that 175 territory. It's more or less hanging out around that $200 territory, so I'm going to price it as that. And then on this side, we have a 1080, not Ti. It is kind of a worn out Dell blower card, but you could probably get this for about high 200s, low 300s. And then on this side, we have a 3060 Ti at $450, which you can get a 3060 Ti at $400. It's just kind of hard to do. This version specifically is a gigabyte model at $450, so I'm going to price it like that. So together, these roughly equate to about $600 a side, and should show perfectly why you should spend your money on your graphics card instead of your CPU. This one specifically is getting kind of long in the tooth, but with 8 gigabytes of GDDR5X memory, it still holds up really good in 1080p, 1440p, and some really light 4K gaming workloads. While the 3060 Ti has 8 gigabytes of GDDR6, not X, memory, it does a fantastic job at 1080p, 1440p, and light 4K workloads. Although it also has the option of ray tracing and DLSS, which really help carry it into like another level of performance. So, today we have Benchy set up with a B450 motherboard that has recently got the BIOS update to run Ryzen 5000, so we can test them both on the same board. I have 16 gigabytes of, I'm going to clock it at 3200 megahertz RAM. So let's start off by running the Ryzen 5 3600 with the 1080 to get a baseline of our lower tier price bracket here. Like this card with this processor is about $500, and this with this is only like $100 more. God, why are 1080s worth so much still? Blows my mind. Yeah, I actually saved this card from like the bin. It had 2 capacitors knocked off the back of it, and I went ahead and soldered them back on, and it actually still works great. All right, so first thing that we're going to test out is, well, why not Cyberpunk? Because it seems to be the game that everyone's having trouble playing. I would really like to compare the 3100 to the 3600, launch a whole bunch of tasks in the background to see at what point the performance falls below what a 3600 can bring. Although in Cyberpunk, you get a lot of utilization, so it should be pretty similar to what a 3100 could do, but then once you start opening tasks in the background of a 3100, it could start to limit your performance. The textures are set to high in the main menu, by the way. Yeah, so as you can see, my CPU usage is sitting at like 44%, and my GPU usage is at 96%. And man, all those cores are cranked. We're seeing about 70 FPS, and all these settings are probably maxed. Oh wow, they're all low. Let's just go to high. Obviously no ray tracing because this card doesn't have support for that, and no DLSS because this card also has no support for that. So yeah, we're getting about that 60, dipping down into the 40s. But where we are right now, we are 100% GPU bottlenecked. So there isn't really anything you're going to see from a better processor that's going to make this game look any better and perform any better, because the CPU is not even working its hardest. We're in a nice indoor scene, by the way. Like, I think there's a lot of textures in here, and it should be creating FPS drops. All right, let's go ahead and run Cyberpunk at 1440p. Obviously, my rib tuner statistics get even smaller. I'm going to load that same save. All right, so you can see we're getting 30-something FPS at the same texture settings as 1080p. But our CPU utilization has actually gone down. Like, it's hanging out at that 30% mark now. because it's not issuing as many frames to the graphics card. It doesn't need to. Like, the graphics card can only take so many frames at this point. So if you're planning on using whatever graphics card you get with 1440, there is no reason to get a 5600X other than to spend more money. But still, we're testing that out. Hopefully you don't just leave this video and be like, no, it's gotta be wrong. I'm not even gonna bother with 4K. It's not going to improve CPU utilization, and it's definitely not gonna improve frame rate. All right, and secondly, we're gonna run Shadow of the Tomb Raider in its benchmark mode to get a good idea of what that title can draw. Good 1080. You're doing so good, buddy. Just keep up the good work. So options, graphics, we're gonna run it at 1080p first. I'm just gonna run it at high and turn off motion blur. You can do it, buddy. You can do it. So yeah, once again, we're sitting at 60, 50, 60, it's dropping. Yeah, it's hanging out at 50, 60-ish, 40 to 60. Yeah, 40, 70. Not bad, not bad. Wow, it's getting pretty good utilization. Higher utilization than I thought it was going to get, actually. We're also seeing right around that 100 FPS, which is pretty good. You could probably turn the settings up a little bit more and see that come down to like 60, and you'd be playing the game in full cinematic 1080p. So at 1440p, we have dropped down into the 30s as far as CPU utilization. We only lost about 20 FPS though, which is pretty good. Well, we're getting up into the 60s, 60%, and then back down to like 40. But again, we're 100% GPU bottlenecked here. Should I even try 4K? Let's try 4K. the rib tuner statistics get so tiny. It's so hard to see. I want to see below 30% CPU utilization. Like, that'd be kind of funny. Yeah, so we're down to the 20s. Yeah, so if you're trying to play 4K games, a 1080 is probably not the GPU for you. But, you know, 40 FPS, it'd be playable. And last but not least, I'm gonna launch CSGO, because that's more of a CPU scaling game anyway. Unfortunately, my rib tuner statistics doesn't really work with it, so we'll just see FPS and go from there. We're gonna be getting like 300 FPS, like more than most people's monitors can even go to. I'm terrible at CSGO, by the way. Like, I have like a total of like 20 hours in this game. Like, I'm trash. I think this is the only case where the 5600X is gonna make a pretty big deal. Like, it might be getting like a lot more FPS. But like, do you really need more? Yeah, so we're hanging out at that 200 and... It varies a lot. I'll just let the video speak for itself. And I'm terrible. God, I'm so bad. Anyway, screw that. CSGO playing at like 200 to 300 FPS. It's what it does. Let's go ahead and drop the 3060 Ti in there. So yeah, we're averaging a much higher FPS than the 1080, obviously. And we're still seeing very little CPU utilization, even at 1080p, which this game isn't really optimized. What were we on before? We were on a custom. I think we were on high with everything. So let's just turn on DLSS because we can. So when we turn on DLSS, we get nearly 30% more frames, 120 FPS. Should we turn on ray tracing to just like poop on it? Just turn on medium. Oh Lord, that crashed the game. Oh, what was that? Brings it back down to not DLSS, so that's nice. Let's turn off. Fair fight, fair fight. Turn it off, turn it off. Kind of fair fight. DLSS is there. Maybe you should just play with DLSS on. All right, let's turn it up to 1440p. Let's turn off DLSS so that we're getting a fair fight there going. So yeah, we're back down to that 40% CPU utilization still. Still over 60 FPS. Yeah, you know, I say that and it drops down to 50 something. Turn on DLSS and we're getting about 100. So much better than a 1080. And even still, like if you could get a 2060 and have DLSS, cool. But a 1080 is technically stronger than a 2060, and they're kind of sitting around that same price. But obviously DLSS makes a huge difference even for that card, so I need to get my hands on one. Let's step it up even into 4K territory and see CPU utilization drop even further. Yeah, we're hanging around 40% still, so not too terrible. Let's go ahead and quit out of this game and move on over to Shadow of the Tomb Raider. I don't know, I think there's still core utilization problems. I think the patch would help that out with Cyberpunk. They say they fixed it. I don't believe them. Step this down to 1080 and run benchmark. 400 FPS in the loading screen. Perfect. So yeah, lots of frames, but we're seeing a much higher CPU utilization here. This is a very well paired combination at this point. Like we're seeing very good CPU utilization. In fact, the 5600X might make a difference in this situation. Let's step it up to 1440p, where I feel like the 3600 is better bang for your buck, obviously. Run the benchmark at that. See the GPU utilization go up because there's more pixels, and CPU utilization come down. Oh, it still gets really good FPS, even at 1440. But obviously you can see the GPU utilization is up at that 96% again, and CPU utilization is still doing really great at that 80, 70-ish percent. So much higher CPU utilization with the higher end graphics card, obviously. I'm only running the first scene here to get an idea of like where they're at. I don't want to spend too much time on it. And let's step it up to 4K. Rib tuner gonna get real small on me again. I love these kinds of tests. I'm always really interested to see how hardware interacts with other hardware, and these kinds of tests just kind of like satisfy me. Again, before I think we were dropping down into like 20% CPU utilization with 4K in Shadow of the Tomb Raider. So like having above 40% is actually kind of wild, but it makes sense, you know, more frames. CPU has to do more. Less frames, CPU has to do less. All right, let's hop on over to Counter-Strike, and obviously I don't think that's gonna change at all because Counter-Strike is Counter-Strike and it doesn't care what kind of GPU you have. It only cares what kind of CPU you have. Hey, sometimes your opponent's just having a really good day. Every day I'm having a really bad day. Hey look, it's Counter-Strike and we're getting over 200 FPS. Not much new to see there. Let's move on to 5600X and 1080, and then we'll move on to 5600X and 3060 Ti to kind of show it really is not going to make that much a difference past 1080p. All right, let's start off with the trusty old 1080. I really feel like nothing's going to change here at all at any resolution, but who knows? I mean, obviously Counter-Strike's going to play better. All right, so first things first, set the memory to 32, and then set the boot drive to, yep, all right. So we're working with the same exact memory frequency here. I'm so happy that this B450 board got the Ryzen 5000 update before the new year. Like, it's really helpful to be able to test them both out on the exact same motherboard. All right, let's launch Cyberpunk and see if it's the exact same on a 5600X as it is on a 3600 with a 1080, obviously. CPU, 30, 40-ish percent utilization. God, it's terrible utilization. But 99% GPU utilization. This is effectively exactly the same as it was with the 3600. Hopefully I can overlay those two next to each other down at the bottom here to show what they look like and if they changed at all. Step it up to 1440, and at 1440 we're seeing half the FPS. And some of you are going to whine at me for not using the percentage. I feel like hindsight, it would probably been a better idea, but it's all future. We're working on the channel here. Do I even attempt 4K? I mean, I didn't do this with the 3600, but let's try it anyway. Oh God, it's terrible. Never mind. Stop it. Put it out of its misery. All right, let's load up Shadow of the Tomb Raider. All right, let's run the benchmark. 5600X with 1080. I feel like the title of this video is going to be why the 3600 is still the bang for your buck king and why you should spend more to get DLSS. So yeah, 100 something FPS. GPU pinned at 100%. CPU 70 something percent. Kind of expected here. So play out this first scene and then switch it over to 1440. We're gonna see even less CPU utilization here. And that feels bad. Like this, it feels really bad when you get something like this and you spent $100 more on a CPU when you definitely should have put $100 more into your GPU. Like, it feels bad. Like, okay, yeah, I've got all this extra CPU utilization that I'm putting, like, going to waste, and what, is that really worth that $100? Would you rather have 20 more FPS, 30 more FPS? I would. So yeah, 50% CPU utilization, 99% GPU utilization. Let's go up to 4K. Yeah, what is that? 20%, even drop below 20%. Like, that's how little you're working this CPU that you paid 50% more for? Yeah. That's how little you're working the CPU that would be 50% more cost, and it's not doing anything. It's completely pointless. All right, let's launch up some Counter-Strike to see the real gains, if any, to be made. It's kind of weird. But like a little bit more than 200. Wow, I was expecting more FPS than that. Get out of my face. I'm kind of surprised. I feel like something's wrong here. I feel like I should be getting more FPS than this, but all right, screw it. I'm not gonna worry about it. We'll test it out with the other graphics card, because literally the graphics card makes like no difference in CS:GO. Now this should be a really strong pairing. Like at 1080, this should be really good utilization, but again, you're paying $100 more. Like if you're gonna pay $100 more to get a 5600X with your 3070 Ti, you should probably just roll that into a 3070. Like, you're not gonna see enough of a gain for that to make a difference. I'm just gonna keep pounding it into you guys. All right, let's launch Cyberpunk with the 5600X and the 3060 Ti. Load the same little area. You got 97% GPU utilization. So again, in Cyberpunk at least, you're not bottlenecked by your CPU, you're bottlenecked by your GPU. Let's turn on DLSS. Oh, over 100 FPS at 1080p. But again, CPU's not doing that much. 70%, pretty good utilization, not gonna lie. Turn this off and then step it up to 1440. So at 1440, we're getting less FPS. We're seeing even less CPU utilization again. Feel like a broken record at this point. Yeah, 30 something percent at 1440. Let's turn on DLSS. A few more FPS, a little bit more CPU utilization. Let's turn it up to 4K. Doesn't feel particularly great. It's still the same as with the 3600, so not really much gains to be made there. And let's turn back on DLSS just to show that this combination can in fact play 4K. Like, DLSS has made that a wonderful option for us. Let's go ahead and move on to Shadow of the Tomb Raider, which I feel like 1080p in this game might have an advantage over the 3600. Options, let's turn it down to 1080p, apply changes. Ah, yes, I think there is an FPS advantage here. Yeah, I'm pretty sure there's an FPS advantage here at 1080p. I feel like we're gonna see this FPS advantage fall off really quick when we go to 1440, but hey, that's why we test these things out. Yeah, it looks pretty good. Hopefully we'll see the spread when I overlay both of them side by side. Let's go ahead and step it up to 1440. We're seeing CPU utilization fall off pretty hard here though. 130 FPS at 1440p. Pretty good though. Yeah, wow, we're seeing some pretty good utilization up there. 85% at 1440, that's pretty good. Let's Go ahead and run it at 4K. Hopefully when I blow that up, it doesn't blur it out too much. I know I'm capturing it at 1080p, so it might not look the best. You know, 70-ish FPS. Might be slightly higher again, but 98% GPU utilization is 98 GPU utilization, regardless of what your CPU is doing. All right, let's go ahead and head over to Counter-Strike and see if it made any difference. I'm not sure why I got worse FPS with the 1080 than I thought I should be getting, but it's Counter-Strike. It's not really meant for this test. I just wanted to show that it would scale, or at least it should scale with CPU performance. But I'm kind of stupid, so I don't know. I might be messing this up. It should be pretty high FPS. Not gonna lie. This is the game that people buy super high refresh rate monitors for anyway. It's like, oh yeah, I've got a 360 hertz refresh rate monitor, and I play Call of Duty where my completely maxed out system can only get like 200 something. Okay, 360. Yeah, hey, look, we're getting up into the 350-ish. So about 50 more FPS than the 3600. So yeah, that's a pretty good gain. If you can see yourself spending 30 more for 50 more FPS, more power to you. This isn't my kind of game, so it doesn't mean anything to me. Oh wow, he got me. But there it is. I'm gonna do a quick rundown of the footage real quick because I'm not 100% sure. I have to like digest a little bit and close out this this video. All right, I went back and looked through the footage, and honestly, the only thing that really shows is that at 1080p and say an older game like Shadow of the Tomb Raider, you'll see a pretty good FPS gain, but like nothing worth that extra $100 that it costs between these two CPUs. Honestly, the only reason I can see the 5600X being worth it right now is future-proofing or playing 1080p only. Like, I personally feel like more detail, a better graphics card is just better for you as a consumer, and $100 more just gets you into a different like tier of graphics card. Like you can get a whole nother level better. Like say your budget was X and you can spend $100 more on your graphics card, you 100% should, because at the end of the day that will raise your CPU utilization up to a point. And as it sits, the 3600 at anything over 1080p is just fine. And it makes it so hard that this product it's genuinely a good upgrade over a 3600 as far as like a step up in performance, but like I don't know, it just the price isn't there. Like the price is just wrong for this thing, and it kind of feels bad. Like the 3600 was like everyone wanted to recommend it, and hopefully a 5600 non-X comes out in the next few months and we can recommend that because it'll only be like $250 maybe. And even at $250, it's kind of a hard sell if the 3600 drops even cheaper. So it's just so hard to recommend. And that's really it, guys. You know, if you liked the video, you know, please like it. Please leave a comment. Please get subscribed. We recently hit 300 subscribers. That is a huge deal for me personally, and I look forward to making more videos in my garage. You can't see it. There's a car behind you. It's great. And also shout out to JC for winning those posters. He left a nice positive comment and won them in a random drawing. So I look forward to him getting those and them being everything he could have expected, because they're just great quality posters, you know. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, go check out the video wherever it's going to be in here. And I'll see you next time, guys. Have a great day.